Insecticide-based interventions are one of the core tools to control vector-borne disease, such as malaria, dengue, chikungunya, Zika, or visceral leishmaniasis. However, the vectors of these diseases have developed resistance to insecticides and continue to do so, threatening the effectiveness of these interventions. It is therefore vital to continuously assess vector resistance to insecticides so that decision-makers in vector-borne disease control programs have accurate and up-to-date information to select effective vector control interventions for these diseases. This video will show you step-by-step how to conduct the standard operating procedure for evaluating the susceptibility of adult mosquito vectors to insecticides using the WHO tube test. During this test, the mortality of mosquitoes is recorded 24 hours after a 1-hour exposure to a known standard concentration of an insecticide, called a discriminating concentration, or DC for short. This video provides instructions on the preparation of materials, mosquitoes and stock solutions, the test procedure, and the recording and interpretation of test results. The full Standard Operating Procedure, or SOP, for this test can be downloaded from the WHO Global Malaria Program website and the Department of Control of Neglected Tropical Diseases website. During the test, data can be entered in paper-based or digital data recording forms. A paper template for data recording is provided in Annex 1 of the Tube Test SOP. The digital DHIS2-based forms are available from the WHO Global Malaria Program website. For this test, you will need a testing chamber or a climate-controlled insectary at about 25 to 29 degrees Celsius and between 65 to 85% relative humidity. You will also need the following: 12 test tubes with screw caps. 6 will be holding tubes with a green dot, 2 will be control tubes with a yellow dot, and 4 will be exposure tubes with a red dot. 12 steel rings to hold plain white papers inside the holding tubes, 12 copper rings to hold the insecticide-impregnated papers within the exposure tubes with a red dot, and the control papers within the control tubes with a yellow dot. 6 slide units, 6 sheets of 15 by 12 centimeter white paper for lining the holding tubes. Aspirators. A mouth aspirator with a HEPA filter or a mechanical aspirator is preferable to avoid any exposure to insecticides or inhalation of allergens. Netting pieces. A timer. Calibrated traceable humidity and temperature monitors or data loggers. 25 non-blood-fed female mosquitoes that are 3 to 5 days old per test tube. Mosquito cages that measure 20 to 25 centimeters in length on each side. Lastly, you will need appropriate personal protective equipment. The reagents and consumables needed are a 10% sugar solution, medical-grade cotton wool, adhesive tape and labels, permanent marker pens, acetone or alcohol for cleaning glassware and the work surface, TFD4 or Deca 90 for cleaning. Some items in this list can be ordered in bulk as a susceptibility test kit for adult mosquitoes from the University Science Malaysia. The university also has filter papers impregnated with standard insecticide DCs and filter papers impregnated with carrier oil, which you can order in boxes of 8 sheets. Papers can be used a maximum of 6 times each and should be kept at a temperature of between 4 to 8 degrees Celsius. The rest of the items should be procured from your local testing laboratory. Before using any chemical compound, laboratory staff should read and understand the risk assessment and material safety datasheets, as well as the control of substances hazardous to health assessment for each chemical used. Appropriate personal protective equipment, including laboratory coat, safety glasses, face mask, and gloves, must be worn at all times when handling insecticides. All working areas should be clear and cleaned with acetone or alcohol before performing the test. Make sure you dispose of all waste materials appropriately following the safety guidelines. When working with mosquitoes, keep all doors and windows shut to avoid their escape from the laboratory. If any mosquitoes do escape, they should be collected or electrocuted. This test requires 150 non-blood-fed adult female mosquitoes aged 3 to 5 days. This allows for 25 females per test tube. Mosquitoes need to be starved for 2 hours before using them in the test. During rearing, larvae need to be well fed and maintained in uncrowded trays during the larval stages and in uncrowded trays during the adult stage. This is important to minimize mortality due to causes other than exposure to the insecticide. First, label the plastic tubes in the WHO tube test kit. Example labels can be found on page 7 of the SOP. The holding tube into which clean white paper is inserted is identified by a green dot. Its label should include the date of the test and the holding tube number. The exposure tube, which holds the insecticide-treated paper, is identified by a red dot. Its label is similar to that of the control tube, but instead of having the type of control, it has the insecticide and concentration used. For example, deltamethrin 0.05%. The control tube, into which the carrier oil or acetone-impregnated paper is inserted, is identified by a yellow dot. Its label should include the date of the test, the number of the control tube, the type of control carrier oil or acetone used, for example PYR for a pyrethroid control, the batch number of the control paper, paper impregnation date, the expiry date, the date of first use, and the number of times it was previously used. These labels make sure that the papers are within their shelf life period and have not been used more than 6 times. To prepare the green dotted holding tubes, take 6 sheets of clean white paper rolled into a cylinder shape and insert 1 into each of the 6 holding tubes. Unscrew the cap with gauze if the tube is pre-assembled. Fasten the sheet into position against the wall of the tube using 2 steel rings for each tube, 1 at the top end and 1 at the bottom end. Place a cap with a 16 mesh gauze at the top end of each holding tube and screw into place. Attach a slide unit to each of the holding tubes by screwing it into place at the open end. Next, prepare the treated and control papers. Before using the papers, the plastic paper box should be brought to room temperature, unopened for 1 hour. To prepare the 2 yellow dotted control tubes, wear disposable gloves and roll and insert 1 control paper into each tube, ensuring that the stamped label on the paper is on the outer side and is readable. Fasten the papers using a copper ring at each end and close the tube with a screw cap at the bottom end. Hold the tube vertically. Prepare the red dotted exposure tubes. Wearing disposable gloves, take 4 insecticide-treated papers and insert 1 into each tube, ensuring that the stamped label on the paper is on the outer side and is readable. Fasten the paper with copper rings at each end and close the tube with a screw cap at the bottom end. Remove the gloves and dispose of them in a biohazard bag. Using an aspirator, aspirate 25 adult female mosquitoes from a mosquito cage into each of the 6 green dotted holding tubes through the filling hole on the tube sliding door. If you do not have enough mosquitoes to insert 25 into each tube, keep the number as close as possible to 25 and aim to distribute mosquitoes equally between the tubes. There shouldn't be more than 25 to avoid crowding. Close the slide unit and set the holding tubes in an upright position. Leave the mosquitoes in the holding tubes for 1 hour. After the 1 hour pre-exposure holding period, remove any moribund or dead mosquitoes, or count these and note the number in the data collection form. Next, attach the 4 empty exposure tubes and the 2 control tubes to the sliding units on the respective holding tubes. Carefully slide the units open and gently blow the mosquitoes from the holding tubes into the exposure tubes. Once all the mosquitoes are in the exposure tubes, close the slide unit and place a cotton wool plug into the hole to lock the slide. Enter the exact number of mosquitoes introduced in each tube on the data collection form. If any mosquitoes died during the transfer process, note the number in the data collection form. Detach the green dotted holding tubes from the exposure tubes and set them aside. Set the tubes in a vertical position with the mesh screen facing up. Place them in an area of reduced lighting or cover them with the cardboard discs to reduce light intensity and to discourage test mosquitoes from resting on the mesh screen lid. Leave the mosquitoes in the exposure and control tubes for 1 hour. Once the exposure time is finished, gently blow the mosquitoes back into the green dotted holding tubes by reversing the procedure explained previously. Detach the exposure tubes from the slide units and place the tubes in an upright position with the mesh screen facing up. Place a piece of cotton wool soaked in a 10% sugar solution on the mesh screen of the holding tubes. This will enable mosquitoes to sugar feed and hydrate. Record the number of knocked down mosquitoes after 1 hour exposure. In other words, all the mosquitoes that cannot stand or fly in a coordinated manner. Hold the mosquitoes in the holding tubes for 24 hours at about 27 degrees Celsius and 75% relative humidity. At the end of 24 hours, count the number of mosquitoes found dead and alive and record the respective numbers on the information sheet. When bioassays are conducted over a few days, impregnated papers can be retained in the exposure tubes provided. The tubes are individually wrapped in aluminium foil after each use and kept at a temperature of between 4 and 8 degrees Celsius. Between testing cycles, reusable papers that have been used less than 6 times should be kept in their original plastic box, sealed with tape and stored in a cool container or refrigerator at a temperature of between 4 and 8 degrees Celsius. At these temperatures, their shelf life ranges from 2 to 5 years, depending on the insecticide. More information on the shelf life of different papers is provided in the SOP. The end point of the test is mosquito mortality. Mosquito mortalities should be calculated separately for the 2 groups of tubes, namely those with insecticide-impregnated paper, the treatment, and those treated with carrier oil or acetone, the control. Treatment mortality is calculated by summing the number of dead mosquitoes across all replicates with insecticide-impregnated papers and then expressing this as a percentage of the total number of alive mosquitoes in such replicates at the start of the exposure period. Mortality in the control is calculated in the same manner. If the control mortality is less than 5%, no correction of test results is necessary. When the control mortality is between 5% and 20%, the test mortality should be corrected with the control mortality using Abbott's formula. For all insecticides, the test results must be discarded and testing repeated if the control mortality is greater than 20%. A vector population is considered to be resistant to an insecticide if mortality within the treatment group is less than 90%, provided that at least 100 mosquitoes of each species were tested. If the observed mortality within the treatment group is between 90% and 97%, the presence of resistance is possible but not confirmed. Test results should be confirmed by repeating the test with a new sample from the same mosquito population. If 2 tests consistently show that mosquito mortality within the treatment group is less than 98%, then resistance is confirmed. A vector population is considered to be susceptible to an insecticide if the mosquito mortality within the treatment group is equal to or greater than 98%. Once the test is finished, soak the tubes overnight in a 20% alkaline solution for equipment in direct contact with the insecticide, or in a 10% solution for equipment that did not come into contact with the insecticide but was used for handling the mosquitoes. On the following day, rinse the equipment 3 times with tap water and dry at room temperature. Clean the bench and fixed equipment with acetone or 70% ethyl alcohol. More information on the WHO tube test can be found online.